So we're here at the example table, and in this video we're going to find the difference quotient of the function f of x equals sine x. So let's take a moment to remember what the difference quotient is. Have some function here, let's call it f, not necessarily the same f, and a line going through it like this at 2 points. So let's say the x-coordinate here is just x, the x-coordinate of this point is x plus h. So we start at x and go over h. That means in particular that this distance is h. Now if we trace each point over to the y-axis, here we get f of x, and here we get f of x plus h. The difference quotient is just the slope of this line. So the slope is rise over run, right? This is change in y divided by the change in x. And the change in y here is just the difference between these two things. So it's f of x plus h minus f of x, and the change in x is the distance between these things, which is h. So it's this, f of x plus h minus f of x, all over h. So as always, you should know this formula, but if you know where it comes from, it's easy to remember. Okay, so let's look at this for our particular example here on a fresh sheet of paper. So if f of x is sine of x, then f of x plus h minus f of x all over h is just sine of x plus h. Remember, x plus h is inside the sign, minus sine of x all over h. And so in one sense, we're done, right? We just found the difference quotient, but the real goal here is to find the difference quotient and simplify. Now you might ask, what do we have to do to simplify this? It already looks pretty simple. Well, this is the issue here. Generally, when we want to simplify something involving trig functions, we don't want a sum of things inside. So we want to rewrite this without the sum inside here. And we're going to use an identity, one of those wonderful trig identities, that says how to rewrite sine of something plus something else in terms of sine and cosine of these individual parts. So we'll get sines and cosines of x and h. And the identity says that sine of x plus h is sine of x times cosine of h plus cosine of x times sine of h. And so we have this whole thing here is equal to sine of the quantity x plus h. And now we have only single terms inside each of the trig functions. So let's subtract the sine x and divide this whole thing by h. And so the last thing we can do is factor this sine x out of these two terms. So that will give us sine x times the quantity cosine of h minus 1. And then we're still left with this plus cosine x sine h. So plus cosine x sine h. And this whole thing still all over h. So once again, just a reminder, this, as far as we're concerned, is not the simplified version, right? Because it has this x plus h in it. This, at first, looks worse, but each of these trig functions is being applied to only a single quantity. So this is our nice simplified version. And that's the solution.